Hi, welcome to History 2322 World Civilizations since 1500. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez, and I'll be your instructor for this course this semester. All right, so what are we going to be doing in this recording video presentation is to go over the syllabus and identify the major components of this online course in terms of the requirements, for example, the textbook, for example, the mode of learning or method of instruction, how you're going to be learning the material for this course. We will be also talking about the exams, how they're going to be formatted, how you're going to prepare for those exams as well. We're going to be also looking at assignments. There will be a major assignment due at the end of the semester, and I'll talk about that as well. I will discuss also other issues such as extra credit assignments, grading, and so on. So this is a very, very important orientation video that is going to help you identify, on one hand, the major components of this course as they are going to be presented on Blackboard, which is going to be the major or main platform that we're going to be using for this course. But also, this orientation video is going to help you understand how to prepare for this course in order not just to pass this course, but also to excel in the course as well. Okay, so it's very important. All right, so let us look at Blackboard, which I just said is going to be the main platform that we're going to be using to deliver the instruction for this course. And as you open the Blackboard page, you will see a series of links on the left column. Let us just say you're trying to open the page from the get-go. So again, so you click on the course, and initially what you'll see on the Blackboard page is the announcement page. Now, I have not yet posted any announcement yet. I'm about to do so. I'm about to write an announcement indicating that I'm preparing this video introduction for you to watch on Tuesday. So it will be available by Tuesday. So Tuesday is really the first day of class, so to speak, and this is where I will post the video, and I will send you the email announcement indicating that the video is ready to view and that it is highly important that you review this material, this presentation, as thoroughly as possible, because it will explain everything that you need to know for this course. Okay, so everything that you need to know is explained here. So it's extremely important that you review this video entirely. Again, because a lot of students feel lost, when they take an online course. They go to the website, they open the page of Blackboard, they read the syllabus, but still they do not know exactly how to proceed forward. They can identify major sectors of the course or some certain assignments that they need to do, etc. But consider this video presentation as the very first day of class. If you were to be taking a face-to-face class, an in-person class, this is the very first day where when you meet the instructor, and the instructor explains the syllabus very thoroughly, and you receive very good guidance during the first day about what the course is going to be about, how the exams are going to be structured, how you can prepare for them, the textbook, the assignment, and so on. Again, so you have the very first day of class a very clear idea as to what kind of course you're taking and how it's going to be delivered and structured, formatted, and so on. Okay. All right. So let's start then by looking at the syllabus. As I said, this is like syllabus day, so to speak. And if you look at the left column of the Blackboard page, you'll see a series of links. This is where all the major sectors of the course are located. So the very first link is titled Class Introduction, and this is where this video is going to be located. Okay, so once I send you the email announcement on Tuesday, this is where you're going to be guided again to open the video and watch it again under Class Introduction. And just beneath that link, there's a link titled Syllabus. If you click on that link, it will take you to the syllabus page. So instead of just posting the Word doc, the file of the syllabus, which is posted right there. I mean, if you want to download it and save it on your computer, you can do so. Again, it's right here at the very top. I made sure for you to have an easy access to the syllabus by just reading the syllabus again by clicking on that link. Okay, so this is a very, very important document. It contains everything that you need to know about this course. In many cases, questions that students have over the course of the semester can be answered by just looking at the syllabus, but nonetheless, I mean, you can still contact me for clarification, of course, and I will provide guidance. Okay. So let's start from the very top. This is History 2322, section 002. This is a course titled World Civilizations 2. This is the second part of World Civilizations since 1500 AD. Okay. The first part deals with world civilizations up to 1500, so everything that really transpired before 1500 AD. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I will be your instructor for this class this semester, and the fastest and easiest way to reach me is via email. My email is listed, as you can see here, alfonso.lopez@austincc.edu, and I'm checking my email every day, several times a day. So my policy for responding to students' emails is that from Monday through Friday, I will be responding within a 24-hour period. So if you send an email early, let's say Monday, more than likely you will be receiving a response that day. Now, if you send it quite late, it will be the following day, okay? And so on. During the weekends, however, I might or might not respond within a 24-hour period. It's not guaranteed. But usually, students who send me an email, let's say early Saturday morning, receive a response for sure early Monday. Again, sometimes I respond during the weekends, but it's not guaranteed because sometimes I'm out of town and attending personal or academic matters. So sometimes it's just difficult. Some weekends are difficult. So again, Monday through Friday, 24-hour period, and during the weekends, 48 hours, okay, response. For any questions, concerns, issues dealing with exams or clarification with some of the lecture material and so on, or due dates, clarification about the format of the assignment that you're supposed to submit at the end of the semester, all of that can be addressed by sending me an email, okay? All right, so in terms of the textbook, we're going to use one textbook, and this is the required text for this course by Alfred J. Andrea and James Overfield. It's called The Human Record, Sources on Global History, Volume 2. So make sure you're getting Volume 2 because this is the second part of World Civilizations. Volume 2 since 1500. And make sure you're getting the 8th edition because, as I will explain in just a few moments, this book is going to be used to complete the course assignment that is due at the end of the semester. Okay? Which means that this is not a standard textbook per se, the way other textbooks are formatted in terms of, well, you have a text that has a narrative of historical events about a particular country or culture or region, for example. This is more than anything else a collection of historical documents or primary sources, okay, that come from all over the world, from virtually every culture and civilization in the world since 1500. And those are documents that are statements or memoirs or letters, in many cases, written by very important historical figures that shaped world history during this time. And so the idea is that you are guided to read certain of documents. I've selected about 10 major documents from this textbook for you to read and answer some questions on those documents. And this is going to be, again, the main reason why you're going to be using this textbook, and that is to complete the course assignment, the study questions report, as it is termed. That is due on April 25th, almost towards the end of the semester. Now, the extra credit assignments are also based on this textbook as well. There's going to be 3 major extra credit assignments. Those are optional, they're not mandatory. So if you want to increase your grades for each exam, you can do those extra credit assignments. And they also require for you to read other documents that I've selected and also answer some questions as well. Now, having said that, this is a very, very particular book in that instead of just being a collection of just historical documents that are scattered and unconnected, what the authors of this book have done is that they have connected those documents in a series of themes or topics, and they also provide a historical background to those topics as well. So there's also an element in this textbook of what is called a standard textbook as well, in that although you're not reading just a narrative of world history per se, you are indeed being provided, a historical background to each of the major civilizations, each of the major cultures and time periods, so you understand, how history unfolded since 1500 and which were some of the major historical figures of each one of those cultures and civilizations and time periods that produced those documents. So again, it really, again, is a book that, whether you're in the history major or not, I will keep this book for future reference. Again, it's a very invaluable material, historical material, because once again, it is providing a direct access to the voices, to the thoughts, to the views of very important historical actors that shaped world history. You're hearing directly from them. You're hearing their expressions, their views about the world, or their views about other societies outside of their own. Okay, it's very, very important. To get the exact edition, which is the 8th edition, I've provided the ISBN number. It is listed there. Make sure you're getting the 8th edition, because earlier editions do not contain the same documents. So you're not going to be able to complete the assignment by using, let's say, the 7th or the 6th edition. Okay. Now, where you can get this textbook, as far as I'm concerned, I was notified that the ACC bookstore at Highland campus is the one that actually sells this book. Okay, so you'll have to make a trip there. Of course, I will suggest calling them beforehand just to make sure that they do have some in stock before making that journey there. But also, let me share something with you, and that is that for some reason the bookstore has a policy of returning unsold copies at the middle of the semester. Okay, so in mid-semester, the bookstore starts returning books back to the vendors. Why? Well, because they assume that students who have not bought the book by mid-semester, they're not going to do so at that point in time. In other words, that maybe students obtain the book somewhere else, from an online vendor and so on, They maybe rented the book, from Amazon or Barnes and Noble, which some students can also do as well. So the bookstore does, they don't know that students are supposed to buy this book to complete an assignment that is due at the end of the semester, and that's why students wait until later on in the semester to buy it. They don't know that. So by the time students go to the bookstore, they find that there's no more copies there available again, and they have to now locate those copies, in an online source such as Barnes and Noble, which they carry it, by the way, but it takes time for you to get. It takes about 5, maybe 7 days for you to obtain a book. And so that adds to the time that you're supposed to have in order to be reading those documents and be answering the questions as well. Again, it's very counterproductive to wait until the very end to buy the book. I suggest to buy the book as soon as you can. That way you already have the book and you start working on this assignment slowly across the semester. Okay, not in a rush. This is an online course. It will be delivered fully online and in an asynchronous format, which means that there's no designated class meetings for real-time instruction or real-time instructor-student interaction. So this is a very flexible course format that allows students to tailor their own schedule to really create the space each week to review the material that you're supposed to be reviewing each week, which as I will explain, I suggest that each week you watch 2 video lectures, again, in order to be on a par with the course as we're moving along. The idea is not to procrastinate and kind of pile up pending materials that you're supposed to be reviewing, so you later on try to catch up with just a lot, again, of lectures and try to watch them all at once, in a couple of days. Again, some students can do that. I mean, I'm not saying that you cannot, but I suggest that, since you might be having, other duties and responsibilities, work-related, personal, family, etc., that 2 lectures per week will be the ideal, to just, be synchronized with the rhythm, with the pace of this course. All right, so let us go over then the course description, what this course is going to be about. Now, this is World Civilizations since 1500, and what we're going to be doing is really looking at a series of civilizations since 1500 and seeing, not necessarily seeing each one of them individually and separately, something I actually do in the first part of this course, when I teach world civilizations up to 1500, I actually look at individual civilizations one by one, whether it's Mesopotamia or Egypt, India, China, Mesoamerica, and so on, Greece and Rome. I look at them individually. Here, what we're going to be doing is something a little bit different. And instead of looking at civilizations individually, we're going to see interactions between civilizations as how they're really are influencing and affecting each other, in other words. Okay? So it is a quite different approach to teaching world civilizations, because you are going to be presented with the major civilizations that were present by 1500s moving forward, and how they're becoming more and more interconnected, in many cases interdependent on one another throughout this period of time. Okay? What really characterizes this time period that we're looking at from 1500 to the present day, in other words, okay, so if we are looking at the world since 1500, what the world was really going through in the last, let's just say, 500 years, there are two major historical forces that are shaping virtually every civilization around the world. And one is modernity, the rise of the modern world, the rise of modernity. And the other is globalization, that the world is increasingly becoming more and more globalized. In other words, that we're seeing the emergence of something called a global community of sorts. Something that is in process. This is not really something that has been created. It is a historical process that has unfolded for many, many centuries. And presumably, the way the world is going, this is a process that will continue to unfold for many, many centuries to come as well. The emergence, perhaps, of a single global society with a single global culture, for example, and the economies of the world becoming more and more interdependent and interconnected as well. Okay? It's a global community, in other words. So those are the two major forces. Again, modernity on one hand, and modernity is really the coming of the machine age, the age of the machine, the age of modern science and modern technology, the use of knowledge by human beings in order to control the environment and solve problems in the natural world and in human societies, for example, and develop technologies that are supposed to make life better for human beings, replace the labor that has been done by humans and animals for the technologies, for the machines, again, to actually do the work for us, in other words. Okay? So modernity entails, science. It also entails technology, but it also entails other things other than that, and that is the reorganization of human societies in terms of making, for example, the economy more productive, making the economy work for people, in other words, to increase the standards of living of human beings, and trying to introduce new models, new economic systems that will achieve those goals, for example. So we see in the age of modernity the advent of things like capitalism, for example, and also other economic systems that compete with capitalism, such as socialism, for example, and communism, etc. And this is the age of the isms. The many isms, again, that are characteristics of modernity. Economic models that are supposed to create this ideal society where people have, of course, all their needs met, but beyond that, they have, a comfortable existence, and the standards of living are increased. Modernity also entails political systems that are more representative of the needs and the values and the wills of the masses as well. Okay, something that today is known as democracy or popular sovereignty and political representation. Again, those are representative form of governments that are supposed to represent the needs of the population. All of that entails modernity. Those are the two major forces that have shaped the world since 1500. Modernity with the science and technology, with a modern economy and modern political systems based on democracy or popular sovereignty, and globalization. The idea that the continents and all the societies and cultures and civilizations of the world are encountering one another, and they're becoming more and more interlinked and interdependent upon one another, economically, culturally, financially, and the like, creating, again, a global network, a global community. This is what is characteristic, again, of this time, okay, that we're going to be analyzing. So, for that reason, the way that I have structured this class is for you to look at a series of globalizations, a series of civilizations around the world that include civilizations in the American continent, in Europe, in the continent of Africa, in the Middle East, and Asia, and how those major civilizations encountered one another and began this process of entering the modern world, eventually the age of globalization. And in order to do that, the way I have structured this class is by, first and foremost, in the very beginning, the first part of the course that is going to span for about 5 weeks, more or less, is going to look at a series of topics that will deal with what is called an era of change and increasing global interactions. An era that spanned, roughly speaking, from, let us just say, the 1400s to the 1600s. This is extremely, extremely critical that we start with the preamble, so to speak, to this course, is looking at this era of change and increasing global interactions. And for that, we start by looking first and foremost, and this is one of the very first topics of the semester, is by looking at the many worlds of the pre-modern era. Okay, so before the age of modernity that began, roughly speaking, around 1500, we take a glance at the many worlds that existed before the age of modernity. This is for you, to identify very clearly how people's lives around the world were like, what civilizations were like, what kind of economic activities, again, people undertook prior to modernity, how they sustained themselves, in other words, what kind of work they did. Because it was very different than the kind of work that we do today in the age of modernity. Today we take on jobs, we're paid wages and salaries, and it's called a wage labor economy, for example. This is how people actually sustain themselves. Okay? Well, prior to 1500s, there was no wage labor whatsoever, as we will explain. Okay? Capitalism didn't exist prior to 1500s. Okay? This idea of private property, it was very rare, around the world. People went about sustaining themselves very differently than our society today. Mostly, again, it was about farming and agriculture. Okay, those were agricultural civilizations, and we will examine that. The kind of civilization that existed prior to 1500s. Those were agricultural civilizations, whereby, whether we're talking about China or India and Egypt, for example, or in Europe, or in Mesoamerica, like the Mayas or the Aztecs. each one of those civilizations, again, sustained themselves through agricultural production. And the vast majority of human beings on the face of the earth were farmers working the land. Again, so we will look at that. In other of the major economic groupings like artisans and merchants, for example, we're going to look at that as well, and their role in that kind of world prior to 1500, and also the nomadic groups like the herders, for example. They also were important in sustaining human societies as well. We're going to look at that very thoroughly, and also we're going to look at social organization, how people were organized socially. We look at kinship, for example, kin groups, like what is called clans or tribes, and also clientage, people organized around what's called feudalism, feudal societies. There were, once again, how people came together to form communities, to form societies, were very, very different from how people in the modern world are forming societies. Again, so this is going to help you understand the world as it was prior to modernity, so you'll be able to understand the changes that transpired after 1500 and how that world that existed before is going to be radically transformed with the changes that we're going to be covering here. We're also going to look at religious worldviews, because really religion was fundamental to people's lives. Prior to 1500, everything was based on religion. Politics was based on religion. The right to rule of kings, systems of laws were in many cases guided by religious law in many societies. Also science, how people came to terms with the universe, how they understood the natural world and their place in it, was guided also by religious beliefs and principles. Okay, so we're going to look at the different religious worldviews, whether it's China or in India, for example, in the Middle East and Europe, Africa, Mesoamerica. Those are going to be the major areas that we're going to be looking at, and you'll get a very good sense about the entire landscape, again, around the world that existed prior to the arrival of modernity. Okay, so we start with that, and after that we start looking now at the gradual changes that are beginning to alter that world. Okay, the gradual changes, and what were those changes? Okay, and the second topic, we're going to look at the changes that began the process of altering that pre-modern world and begin the process of establishing what is called the early modern era. And that is the beginning of long-distance trade. Again, we see the rise of global trade networks where civilizations are becoming more interconnected through commercial exchange. We see also climate change, coming into the scene as well, altering the relationship between nomads, the nomadic groups, and the sedentary groups, the agriculturalists, and there's going to be more and more friction and more war or warfare between them as a result of climate change. And as a result of that, we see the emergence of the very first large land-based empires, again, that came along with those changes of, again, long-distance trade and climatic change, the troublesome relationship between nomads and sedentary groups, and another force that is going to also help bring in the modern era and shatter all the institutions of the past was epidemics, of course, because with long-distance trade, once people are becoming more and more interconnected through long-distance trade networks, and people are crossing over long distances carrying goods from one point of the world to another, they're also carrying with them germs, of course. Okay, so we see, particularly in the 1300s, a major catastrophic event that affected Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, and that was the Black Death. And the Black Death really destabilized the institutions of the past, whether it was those feudal institutions, monarchies, for example, the political institutions as well, even the religious worldviews, again, were very shaken up by the Black Death, and this is going to lead people to question, in many cases, their institutions, their leaders, and their religions, and begin to search for new answers. Okay? Begin to search perhaps for a new system of knowledge, what will lead to, of course, later on, the rise of modern science, for example. Okay? And the rise of capitalism, the rise of, representative governments, and so on. Again, so we look at that. Another topic we're going to be looking at in the first era of change, okay, and increasing global interactions is the rise of the first trading empires. We see with the beginning of long distance trade, the rise of the first trading empires in the world. Okay, whether it is the Chinese Empire, for example, in the 15 and 1600s. We see also the Mughal Empire of India in the 15 and 1600s as well. We see also the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East, again, what is Turkey today, okay, the Turkish or the Ottoman Empire as well, that was controlling the Mediterranean basin, the trade there. And we're also going to look at the European empires, whether it's the Portuguese, the Spanish, French, Dutch, and British, as they're beginning to move out of Europe and extend their trading networks into parts of Africa, India, Asia, and also America. And in this process, as they're beginning to extend themselves outwardly, all of those empires, what we're going to be looking at is an era of global encounters. Again, those are not just limited encounters anymore by merchants that are traveling from one point to another, but rather those are large political entities that are extending themselves far and beyond, again, their place of residence or origin, to extend themselves into far-flung areas of the globe, to establish trading outposts, for example, and to engage in commercial exchange across the world. And with that, we see the encounters of all of the cultures and civilizations of the world. And we're going to examine those interactions once again. The interactions between the Europeans, for example, and the Africans, the Europeans and the Native American civilizations, but also the Ottomans and the European interactions, and so on. Again, each one of them will be assessed. Once we cover 3 topics, we will have an exam. Something I will explain once we get to that section of the exams. Again, so I'm just explaining here how we're going to be moving along. Okay? That is going to be the very first historical era. Is going to have 3 main topics. Again, the era of change and increasing global interactions. Then we move into part 2 of the semester, and we are moving forward in the timeline. And the next historical era is called the emergence of the modern world. And we're also going to look at 3 main themes or topics that deal with the emergence of the modern world. And once we move into the emergence of the modern world, now we're going to look at the actual process that gave us modernity, okay, whereby modernity was created. And the first topic that deals with that, the emergence of modernity, is called the Age of Revolutions. The Age of Revolutions is a time period that spanned, roughly speaking, from the 15 to the 1700s. Those centuries from the 15, 16, and 1700s was really an era of increasing change and revolutionary upheaval that gave us, for example, the birth of First and foremost, modern science. The beginning of a new way of looking at the world and trying to understand it. A more materialistic lens that is going to discard all kinds of religious premises and beliefs and values. They're going to leave out the spirit world from the world of nature, and this science is going to concentrate again on understanding the natural world, the physical material world, again as it is perceived by our senses. So we see the beginning of modern science, and this is going to be a profound change in the way people are going to perceive themselves in the world. Because once again, prior to modernity, it was religion. Religion was really the basis of everything. You know, the God or a series of gods or spiritual beings had created the world, and they were the ones in control of the world. So everything that happened in the world was controlled by those spiritual forces. But now, what modern science is doing is leaving out altogether all kinds of religious beliefs about gods and spirits and so on, and trying to understand the world as simply as just matter. Okay? And this is going to start altering, once again, human societies at large. And human societies are going to become more and more concerned with the here and the now. The here and the now. This is called secularism. So this is another revolution that we're going to be looking at again. It's a philosophical revolution. And this philosophical revolution is called secular humanism, whereby humans are seeing themselves at the forefront of history and at the very center of the world and the very center of the universe, the most important creatures, in other words, the most intelligent, and that we were endowed by nature with an intellect to understand everything in creation, and that through our knowledge that we can indeed shape this world to our benefit and our advantage. Okay? That humans are here, in other words, to influence nature, to shape and mold it, if need be, in order to suit our interests, our survival interests, for that matter. Okay? So again, this is the rise of humans, becoming more and more concerned with the here, with the now, with this physical world, and trying to shape it, trying to control it, trying to mold it, in other words. Okay, trying to create the ideal society, the ideal world. Okay, that led to other revolutions, and the other revolution that stemmed from this process, from this philosophical revolution, was an economic revolution. Okay, we already talked about the rise of long-distance trade, the rise of trading empires that are beginning this process of globalization, by the way, the global encounters and so on. Well, at some point, as we move into the late 1500s, moving to the 1600s and beyond, we see the emergence of a new system. Gradually, slowly but surely, we see the emergence of what today we call capitalism. Now, this idea that human beings have the right to own property and use that property to create enterprises in order to generate wealth. Create capital, in other words. Okay? Create capital. So we see that, again, this is an economic revolution that is moving away from the past, from people simply growing crops and working the land, to now moving into enterprise creation. Creating different kinds of enterprises. Some of those enterprises have to do with trade, like trading operations and trading companies. But as we move into the 1700s, the new enterprises that we're looking at were industries, an industrial revolution. Okay, so we see the process of the industrial revolution being integral to the rise of capitalism. Okay, so this was revolutionary because we see the introduction of a new system that is going to be adopted by nations that are trying to pursue economic progress, economic well-being. Trying to create, the opportunities for people to create enterprises, for them to generate capital, and with that, you increase the wealth of the nation. Okay? This is how nations become wealthy. In other words, that was the idea back in the 1700s onwards. Of course, this is a process that is unfolding primarily in Europe, particularly in Great Britain. However, this class is also going to look at other civilizations along the way. So this is not just going to be a strictly, focused presentation on European events, because what I have described so far, whether it's modern science, the rise of secular humanism, and capitalism, of course, they're emerging in the European continent, of course. But we're going to contrast those ideas with the ideas of other societies. In other words, although Europe is going through those changes, those revolutions that are giving us modernity. Modernity was born in Europe, of course, but as modernity is beginning to spread around the world, it's going to clash in many cases with the values, with the views, with the belief systems of other civilizations. This is something that we're going to be assessing very closely. Okay? But also the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution is emerging in Great Britain, it's true, but China and India were also going through an Industrial Revolution. However, their Industrial Revolutions are not going to be on a par with the British for reasons that we're going to be exploring here in this class. So we're going to be comparing different Industrial Revolutions in India, in China, and in Europe, and explain the reasons why the British Industrial Revolution was the one that actually excelled and became more dominant and became the model for the other civilizations of the world to follow. So there will be a comparative analysis, if you will, of industrial revolutions as well in this course. The last revolution that we're going to be looking at in the Age of Revolutions is the political revolution that gave us what is called today, simply what is known today as democracy. Okay? By looking at the English Civil War, by looking at the French Revolution, we're going to see the rise of something called democracy. And again, this is also revolutionary because prior to this time, human societies around the world were ruled for the most part by monarchs or princes. In many cases, they were ruled by an aristocracy, a group of landowners, or priests for that matter. But power was never really emanating from the masses. It was never really, again, a process by which people were taken into account. But the English Civil War and the French Revolution, as I will explain, pretty much introduced this idea of popular sovereignty. That the masses are the ones that are the base of all political power, and that they have to be taken into account. Their interests, their needs, their values need to be taken into account. Okay, representative government, in other words. The fifth topic of the semester, after we cover the Age of Revolutions, is going to look at colonialism. Okay, mainly European colonialism, because at some point, due to the rise of everything that I just explained, modern science and technology, the rise of capitalism and the Industrial Revolution, and so on, because of that, Europe is going to grow politically, economically, financially, and even militarily as a result of those developments. They were in possession of a new system of knowledge and new technologies, machinery. They developed things like railroads and steamboats, for example, new military weaponry, gunpowder, in many cases weaponry, cannons and muskets, and firearms of different sorts, and so on. And because of that, Europe is going to gain an advantage over all the other civilizations of the world, And because we're looking at this era of increasing global trade and global commercial exchange, Europe is going to use those advantages in science and technology and also in investment in capitalism in order to extend their control over vast portions of the world. And they're beginning to move into places like India, like the British, for example. They're moving in also to trade more directly in China. And by the 1800s, they're now colonizing Africa as well. So they're creating, again, different colonial territories that they control directly through their imperial systems. And that creates, again, this phenomenon known as colonialism. Now, as we do that, we're also going to take the perspective of the colonies as well. In other words, how the colonies that Europe controlled were subdued. In other words, this is a process that did not occur over time. It was a slow process of change whereby the Europeans arrived first in order to trade, but slowly but surely they gained more and more power, again, over those societies, eventually took control over them. And so we're going to analyze that. And we're also going to see responses of the colonies against the empires as well, what is called, colonial resistance, again, or against European imperialism as well. We're going to see that as well. So it's not just going to be Europe or European history, but rather is going to also look at the colonial world as well. Again, the interactions, again, between Europe and those parts of the world that are becoming more and more subjugated, if you will, by the Europeans, whether it's Africa or India and China as well, and also the Middle East, places like Egypt, for example, and so on. After we do that, then the following topic of the second era is going to look at modernization, particularly in Latin America, Russia, and China. There will be regions of the world that will be actively seeking to modernize their countries and their economies. And so we're going to look at the Latin American region in the 1800s, how they attempted to modernize. Russia as well during the late part of the 1800s, early 1900s. They're also trying to push the process of modernization. And also China. Again, they're also trying to enter the modern world by creating a series of changes in their economies and political systems. And this is something we're going to assess very closely as well. Now, the third and final part of the course is going to look at a period of time in world history that is called from modernity to globalization. Again, so it's going to look at the late 19th century all the way to the present. Okay, and in order to do that, we're going to explore three topics. One is going to be called world revolutions. And those were the revolutions that erupted in the world against modernity. Those were anti-modern revolutions. In other words, modernity, although it created a series of changes in Latin America, Russia, and China, they also upset the traditional relationships that people had developed, traditions in terms of religious beliefs and practices were upset as well. And also they upset also the rights, for example, that certain groups of people like peasants and farmers had with their own communities and lands and so on. And we're going to see, of course, uprisings against this process of modernization. And the revolutions that I will cover in this seventh topic called World Revolutions is the Mexican Revolution. I will cover the Russian Revolution and also the Chinese Revolution. Again, three major revolutions that actually contested and resisted the process of modernity. The eighth topic is going to look at world wars and decolonization. we're going to look briefly at World War One and World War Two and the Great Depression in between. It's not going to be an exhaustive presentation on that, because this is going to be just the background for understanding decolonization, the process by which the colonies that Europe had acquired, in the 19th century, in this process of colonialism, are now up in arms and they're now declaring independence. And we're going to be looking at decolonization in Africa, decolonization in India, decolonization in the Middle East, particularly. Okay, so this is going to be the central focus of the eighth topic. It's called decolonization. The final topic is going to be a topic that will deal with globalization and its discontents. So it's going to be a more recent history. Mainly, this is a history that starts around the end of the Second World War, 1945, all the way to the present. The beginning of what is called the global, economy, what is called globalization, and how the economies of the world are becoming more interconnected, although not all of them. We're going to look at some of the major challenges that globalization is facing, and also the environmental, of course, cost as well of globalization, okay, in the last topic, okay. All right, so this is, again, in very general terms, what we're going to be looking at across the semester, okay. Now, the mode of learning. How are you going to be learning all this material? Again, how are you going to be learning all this material is through a series of recorded video lectures, okay. So every week I will be posting 2 video lectures under this, the folder. When you look at here, course content, there's a link called or titled instructional materials. And there are 2 folders. The upper folder is called recorded video lectures. And in that folder, you will find 9 folders. 9 folders. And those are the 9 topics that I just explained. I just pretty much explained everything that I'm going to lecture, across the semester, step by step. And so those are the 9 topics or the 9 themes that we're going to cover. So each theme is going to have 3 video lectures. Okay, each topic will be covered in each one of those will be covered in 3 video lectures that are exactly like this. Again, this is the same experience. You'll be listening to the instructor, and I'll have an outline and so on with bullet points for you to look at and so on. Your responsibility is to be writing notes, because all the notes will be used for the exams. Okay, so this is very important. The notes that you're obtaining, all this information, is going to be extremely, extremely critical for passing the exams, because all the exams are going to be based exclusively on the notes and nothing else. You don't need to be worried about anything else. So every week, Tuesday and Thursdays, again, I will be posting videos, and I will be letting you know. I will be sending you an announcement. Okay, so I have posted, the first session of the first topic, for example, for you to watch. Then Thursday, I will tell you, look, watch now session 2 and so on. So you'll be receiving 2 emails from me each week. Once those videos are uploaded on Blackboard, on their folders for you to watch, your responsibility is to watch them and take notes once again. Now, let us go back to the syllabus. I recommend that you keep a certain pace and rhythm of watching 2 video lectures per week. And don't procrastinate and leave those videos for a future time, because they're going to be piling up. And so by the time that you're going to go back and try to catch up, you're going to have like 6 or 7 videos to watch. It will be just too much. in other words. So I know you might be busy working or having other duties and responsibilities, personal, family, and so on. So just try to make some space to watch 2 videos per week. Okay, videos per week. Now, the videos, they're, again, are lecture-based. Lectures that are span for about an hour and 20 minutes. At max, they're going to be an hour and 20 minutes, which is really the time span of a class if you'll be taking a class, again, in person, in campus, for example. So it's the same experience. This is a virtual experience of a face-to-face class, but it's virtual, it's recorded, so you can watch it in your own time. Now, as I said, my lectures do not come from a single source, but rather from a multiplicity of sources, books I read along the way over the past 30 years of my life, when I was in college, doing my bachelor and master's and doctorate degree and so on, articles I read and so on. So I've compiled all this information and I've assembled 9 topics, again, that pretty much explain world civilizations since 1500. Again, everything that I just explained in the past half an hour or so. Again, those are the names, those are the titles of those topics divided into 3 time periods. Again, so along the way, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at a series of global civilizations around the globe and how they're interacting with one another, how they're impacting, how they're changing one another, and so on. This is what going to be pretty much the central focus, again, of this course. Okay. Now, in addition of those major topics, this course is going to also pay special attention to certain key analytical areas that are critical to understanding world history. For example, we're going to be paying attention very closely to the natural environment and also epidemics. Okay? The natural environment is really a key player, a key agent in history, shaping human societies. And we're going to take it into account. How the environment is changing human societies, but also how human societies in many cases impact the environment as well. Because again, it's particularly in the modern world with the advent of modern science and technology, now we have the capacity to impact the environment in some very important ways. We're also going to look at social, political, and economic systems as we look at different civilizations. We're going to look at also comparative scientific and religious worldviews. It is very important to look at how people create scientific systems in different parts of the world, how they attempt to change the environment or control it or understand it. We're going to compare it. We're going to look at different philosophies and ideologies. It's very important, particularly in the modern world. Philosophy and ideology have become central to how people actually think about themselves. We're living in the age of ideology. There's so many ideology that people follow today, and they become the basis, again, of their lives. Cultural encounters and cultural change. This is going to be a very key analytical point across the semester. What causes cultural change? How culture change over time, for example. The formation of state systems and empires. Also, how states, how countries are formed, and also empires, how they're formed and sustained over time. And also, we're going to look at colonialism, but also anti-colonial movements. It's not just enough to look at colonial systems or empires colonizing different parts of the world, but also the response, again, of colonial peoples against to the empires as well. Okay. Now, there will be 3 exams in this course, and each exam is going to cover one of the 3 main. Each one of the exams is going to cover one of the 3 main parts that I just explained in the outline. Okay, so once we cover the first 3 topics of the first part, we have the first exam. We move to the second part, cover 3 more topics, then we have the second exam, and the final for the last 3 topics again. Each exam is going to be 25% of the final grade. And those are going to be more like writing assignments than exams that are timed. In other words, this is not the type of exam that is going to be timed on a specific day, an hour, and so on, and you have this very limited time to do it and so on. But rather, this is something that you have about 5 weeks to do. Each exam you have about 5 weeks to complete. Okay? And the way they're formatted is that you're supposed to answer questions from one topic and key terms from another topic. So let me give you an example. For example, the first exam for sure is going to have, part one is going to ask you to choose between topic number 1 and topic number 2. So you choose one topic and answer all the questions on that one topic. There'll be like 4 or 5 questions. Very thoroughly for 70 points. Part 2, for 30 points, I will extract about 6 key terms from the first topic, and you'll be asked to choose 3 key terms and answer those key terms very thoroughly. And I mean very thoroughly, not just identify them like a dictionary or encyclopedia kind of definition, but rather to really elaborate and explain very, very fully and describe it very fully, okay, for 30 points. So again, the first topic will be the key terms, but topic number 2 and 3, you'll choose one in order to answer the questions. And each exam is going to be pretty much formatted in the same way, okay? There'll be no change. There'll be part 1, part 2 in the same way again. Now, let me tell you right now, that for those exams, it's very important that you watch the videos and you take notes. And because it's an open note kind of exam, of course you're going to use those notes. But that doesn't mean that you can transcribe my notes by using some software or some program from your computer and then just give me the transcription, because that's not going to work. If I start reading my own voice, my own lectures in your paper, okay, your paper will be disqualified. Again, you're not going to receive a passing grade. So you have to use your own words. You have to use that information and write a narrative to explain those historical events. Okay, so please avoid transcription, literal transcription, or mechanical transcriptions done by Word or some other program and so on, because that's not going to work. Okay, and second, avoid using outside sources. If I start reading something I did not lecture because, you decided that it was just easier to go online and, download certain information and read it or whatever, it's not going to work either. Because in either of those two cases, what you're actually saying there, whether you're just giving me a transcription of my notes or you're just using outside sources, is that you did not actually watch the videos. In other words, you haven't taken this class. You have no idea what this class is about. Okay? So you're being absent, in other words. You have not been reviewing the material, in other words. Okay? So you're not participating. So you're not going to receive a passing grade. So those are the two pitfalls that some students are tempted each semester to fall under, and they end up failing the course. So I highly recommend that instead of doing that, you just watch this material and learn the material and then put it in your own words and answer the exams by using your own analysis, in other words. So again, this is again a warning so you understand what to avoid. There's also going to be 3 extra credit assignments. Everybody's entitled to those extra credit assignments. They're already posted on Blackboard, and those assignments come from also this textbook. So this is why this textbook is so important, because it's going to be used for answering the questions for the report, but also for the extra credit assignments. And you can add up to 10 points to each exam. So again, you can increase a whole letter grade each exam by doing an extra credit assignment. Okay. Now, there's a course assignment. It's called the Study Questions Report. And this is based on this book. Once again, I've selected 10 documents from this book for you to read and answer a series of questions. This is, again, very important. This is 25% of the grade and is due April 25th, almost towards the end of the semester. All the guidelines are posted here in the syllabus. It tells you the chapter, it tells you the title of the document, and also the page number, and also the questions. Okay, so the format. You're supposed to write the title of the document, for example, Bernardino de Sahagún, General History of the Things of New Spain, on top of the page, and then follow a question and answer format. Write the question, then the answer. Question and answer, question and answer, one by one. You move into a new document, you move into a new page. And in the top of the page, you write the title. For example, Francisco Garcia Calderon, Latin America, its Rise and Progress, and so on. Again, so they deal with the Americas, they deal with Africa, they deal with India, they deal with China, and they deal with the Middle East. Pretty much one of the major non-European civilizations we're going to be looking at. There's going to be plenty of European history, of course, inserted into the lectures, but as we move along, once again, we're going to be looking at the Middle East, we're going to be looking at Africa, Latin America, we're going to be looking at India, and also at China as well. Okay, and in this report, you're going to have more added insight into those regions of the world. Okay, that is due April 25th. Grading, last but not least, there are 4 major grades. First, second, final exam, 25% each. The study question report, 25% each. But remember, there's also the extra credit assignments. You can increase your grade significantly by doing that. And also, I take into account progress and effort. At the end of the semester, at the very end, I also look at progress. Were you progressing from the first, second, and final exams? Were you moving upward in the grades? Did you submit an extra credit assignment? If you ended up with an 88.70, let's say 5, but you were really improving across the semester, you were really committing yourself to improve and submitted one extra credit assignment and so on, I'll give you the final push for the A. If and only if I see progress and effort. Okay, so take that into account, that your grades are not set in stone. Again, there's plenty of room for improvement. Okay, important calendar dates again for this course are listed there, and also the tentative course schedule and assignments is giving you, for example, week by week. Week by week is telling you which topics we're covering, okay, and when we're going to have the first exam. The first exam, February the 22nd. Once we move into part 2, we cover 3 more topics. Then we have the exam April the 2nd. And then finally, the third part of the semester, we cover 3 more topics. You're supposed to submit the report on April 25th, and then the final submitted on May the 9th. Okay? So I hope this was helpful for you to identify the major components of this course. Under course content, just remember that course assignments, if you click on this link, you'll find the assignments for this course, like the report and the extra credit assignments. I will be posting also the exams there, the instructions, and where you're supposed to be uploading those works, whether it's the first, second, final, the reports, and the extra credits. The extra credits are not mandatory, they're optional, but they're all submitted here. You know, there's a link under submit work, and this is where you're supposed to submit all your work, you know, there. Okay, so it's, you know, I really made it as simplistic as possible for you to identify the major links, you know, where you're supposed to be receiving the instruction and so on. Again, this is the best way that I can actually organize an online course that is very manageable, very friendly, very easy to identify. If you have any questions, any concerns, please let me know. Send me an email, and I will respond as soon as I can. Again, within a 24-hour period, as I mentioned. So once again, this is World Civilization since 1500. My name is Alfonso R. Lopez. I'll be your instructor for this course this semester, and this is all I have for you. I'll see you then on Tuesday when this video is uploaded, and I'll send you the email notification. This is all I have for you, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.